Dan, this challenge weekend intensive on September 6th, 7th, and 8th at Rowe Center, you've said that men today are mired in confusion, unclear on who they are and where to go. What is it that you're seeing happening with men right now, broadly? And why does this seem like this challenge weekend might be a good way to respond?
Broadly, what I see happening is just an entire society in transition, in flux, in a period of really rapid change. And along with that, traditional roles and understandings of identity, both on the individual and the collective scale, have been upended. What I'm seeing with a lot of the men that I work with is a true desire to keep whole, to find wholeness, to find grounding for themselves, for their families, for their partners, for their businesses, for their colleagues, their friends. Really, just such a intense desire to do well and to be healthy. And in the midst of all this change, there's just so many things up in the air. And what this weekend, one of the things that this weekend serves as is a pit stop along the way to really slow down. And with the company of a bunch of other good men, like-minded men, to really turn inward and to turn outward to each other and to turn outward to the trees and the mountains and the water and the rocks, and really ask some simple questions. Where am I? How am I doing? What's ailing me? What's hurting me? Where are my strengths? Where's my root? And from this introspection and from the exercises with the other men comes the possibility to see as far in front of us as possible. If the world is a snowstorm and we have headlights, maybe it helps us brighten our headlights just a little bit to see a few more feet in front of us and walk away with even just enough clarity to take some confident steps forward.
So, Dan, when would someone start to think that this might be a good idea for them? What sort of needs to be a condition in their lives to make them think, I want to join with a bunch of other men who I don't know and venture into this weekend? What's happening in my life that makes me think this is the challenge weekend for me? And how challenging is it going to be?
Yeah, I'll give a couple options or a couple ideas of what might be going on. The first is that for men who have experienced brotherhood, who have experienced a good, healthy, solid container of men before, and maybe it's been a while and maybe you're looking for a fresh take on that, this would be a good opportunity to come back in and reconnect with yourself and with some other men and sort of rekindle that fire of good, healthy male connection. But for those who haven't experienced it before, perhaps what's going on is a sense of groundlessness or even a slightly existential undertone of it might come off as confusion or anxiety, or just a general question of lostness, either in a broad scale or even in a very narrow scale. And the reason that I say that is that what happens in these weekends, and part of what is challenging about it, is coming back and reconnecting with other humans in an open way. Part of what ills us as men is our lack of connection and our purposelessness. And the challenges inherent in this weekend, yes, we're going to do some hiking. We'll spend some time outside. Maybe we'll jump in some cold water if that's something you want to do. But the challenge that I'm referring to in this weekend is really more about the courage that it takes to not lie to yourself and to not lie to yourself in connection and community with other men. And so if we're willing to take that challenge and take that on, what happens, and this has just been the awe that I've been in my career for the last 20 years, is what happens is that our social nervous system kicks in. We feel safe in a way that maybe we haven't in a long time or ever, and we get our feet on the ground. And so the challenge is what the challenge actually is the courage to be honest with yourself and others, and yeah, find a way to remove some of the veils in front of your own eyes.
That's really beautiful. What signs would a man who's thinking about this might look for to think that this might be the right direction? If he's not, if he knows something about what his heart is, what sort of ticks on the compass do you need to have a sense of this might be a good idea?
Yeah, I mean, I direct you to your gut first and foremost. That's easy for me to say. I live a lot by my gut and my heart. Um, but I think that signs that would maybe orient you in the this direction, first of all, would just be a curiosity, right? A curiosity that feels compelling enough to pay attention to, this conversation or what we're doing. Um, After the curiosity, I would think maybe a hunger, and maybe that word, you maybe weren't aware of that before, or maybe you were very aware of it, but like a hunger to be amongst other men, a hunger to have community, a hunger to not be a stranger, a hunger to not be so fucking lonely, a hunger to just, and it may be like a primal part of you, might be like the deepest part of your brainstem that is just literally yearning to not be so alone, and to be seen and to be witnessed and to be heard, and to be cared for. I think that those would be very, very strong waypoints on the way.
Beautiful. Dan, it's hard to say exactly what anyone's going to take away from this because it's a mysterious thing. But what are some of the directions that you're pointing out that people might leave with in terms of the beginnings of a skill or the beginnings of a tickler in their heart or their gut that might point them to have a sense of a direction they might be pointed when they're walking in and maybe
Yeah.
walking out?
Well, I'll give you a few examples, I think, to make it concrete up front. So, in my most recent iteration of this challenge intensive, one of the men who joined us had been struggling to finish his dissertation for 14 years. And we're now a few months out from that adventure. And he has now put pen to paper and written, I believe, last time I talked to him, 160 or 170 pages of this mysterious dissertation he was working on. And another man who came in not really sure what he was looking for. This man happens to be a father, and his intention leaving was to step into what homeschooling his kids would actually look like. Uh, and so I just give a couple concrete examples. What I think is underneath both of those and many other ones is a renegotiation of what their most desired or authenticated life could be, and then just having the support of a community both to unearth what would it look like to veer 1% in a different path in life. What would it look like to back the cart up a little bit and take that other road over here that maybe you wanted to try? What would it look like to take a slight risk in life that would lead to more heartfulness, that would lead to more connection, that would lead to um, less gripping or fighting against the world, but one of more acceptance of what's external and what's internal, and then literally what would it look like to intend to align those things together. So if people are asking, like, yeah, what could you expect to get it? It is hard. It's very, very personal. But I've been doing this for a long time, and there is a consistent there are consistent results. One of these consistent results is feeling far less alone than when you came in. Another one is having experiences of unbridled joy and fun and, playing like you were a kid again. And others, another consistent experience is a level setting or a normalization of what you might look at your own life and your own self as abnormal or outside the norm. And there's this great normalization process that happens in these experiences where you realize that you're not the only one going through things. And in fact, there's a lot of people who will, put the shoulder to the wheel to support you as well.
Dan, you wrote that this weekend is for heart-centered men who want to reclaim their power. Power is a pretty loaded word for, I think, a lot of men. And so I want to know if you could say a little bit more about what you mean by power and how some men might have understandably conflicted relationships with that.
Mm-hmm.
And then maybe the relationship between power and strength as you see it, because maybe only some people can be powerful, but maybe anyone can be strong.
Yeah, great question. I like the word power in this conversation. One of my taglines, or one of the things that I say have said often, is that I feel like good-hearted men might have a chance of wielding power for a positive benefit, right? And so what I mean when I say power is the capacity for one's own light to shine forward, right? And that's completely unique to everyone. But in today's culture, for very understandable reasons, how men have misused power and how us individually have probably misused power in our own life, it's something that we're afraid of. It's something that we're not sure we can wield without hurting others. But my belief really is that same energy that we're talking about with power is also the same energy that does good, that cares for others, that cares for the earth, that can put other things in motion that are that have the opposite intention of harming, right? And I like to dream about a world where good-hearted men who are well supported and connected are able to wield power. I think about my little community here in Maine, and there are so many good men that I know, and few of them are really leaning into leadership positions into community, or really going beyond their little world. And I'm not saying people need to go do something else, but I think our world deserves good-hearted, powerful men and women, obviously. And I think that a man wrestling with this tension around his own power is healthy. And when we do it in a context like this weekend, it can be very healthy and have positive impacts. It's like a huge fuel source that many men are just not hooked up to.
That connects right to my next wondering, which is you also mentioned it in that same statement, freedom. Freedom can seem like a really good idea, and it also can feel maybe like there's no boundaries to anything, and it can feel sort of skittering away and just way too open. What's the difference between a grounded freedom and a ungrounded one, or one that feels like it could just burn all your fuel because you're just doing anything you want? How are you wondering about that a little bit?
Yeah, wonderful question. I mean, the easy answer there is to compare the 30-year-old me and the 42-year-old me. And the 30-year-old me didn't have a committed partner, wasn't a dad, and was literally roaming the world, having all kinds of adventures. And it wasn't negative, but it also wasn't grounded whatsoever. Today I have 3 little kids, I have a wife. We have a small property on the coast of Maine, and I'm living about as pragmatically grounded a life as possible. I'm trying to not get on planes, I'm trying to just be out on the land. And the freedom that I do experience now, at least at times, is it is of a very different nature. It's one of a it feels like it's less projected. It's less wild. It's less a emanation of my dreams. It's less a sort of heroic attempt at a life that means something. It's a freedom that's just here. And it's a freedom that just allows my heart and my body and my mind to give energy in the direction where it's most wanted and needed, which is my family and which is my career. And it's actually quite a it's taken some time to wean off of the ungrounded freedom and be sort of open to the more grounded freedom. Um, but that's very visceral. I do want to answer in a slightly different way too, which is from a meditative practice, you know, position. Is as part of my Buddhist background and my training. One of my teachers had a very poignant nature practice, and we would do water practice with water. We would do practice with all of the elements, really, you know, air and space and fire, and we would do earth practice. And I've actually spent probably hundreds, if not thousands, of hours doing earth breathing and earth practice, and it's really sensitizing the energy body to feel down and make contact with the earth itself, with the element of earth. And your question triggered that because from that place, a basic sitting practice is a very different thing than from not that place, right? And that element of being connected to the earth, I feel, at least for me, how I experience it is one of a combination of safety and possibility at the same time. So I think that yeah, further inquiry into grounded and ungrounded freedom is pretty spot on.
In speaking about open-heartedness and the willingness to just follow your gut and the notion of challenging yourself to be honest with yourself, you've also said that it's for people, for men who are young and old. And you also spoke about hiking. And what if someone doesn't feel like they're physically up to this? Um, in the sense that this is an invitation to all men who are want to be challenged to be honest, but may not feel physically up to this. Not that you can predict exactly how much it's going to be inside and outside, but how do you, as far as you understand now, have the door open for any kind of man who wants to show up, whatever their physical capacity is? Because I think my father wouldn't be able to show up and do any of the physical stuff you're mentioning, but might be
No,
interested in coming.
I mean he's welcome, and we'll make it work. We'll make it work for everyone. And in similar retreats in the past, the physicality of this specific experience is going to be limited to some hiking and some outdoor sitting, and possibly just doing some you know, connection exercises that would be no different whether under a roof or not under a roof. To be totally honest, I just like to be outside, and the simple, you know, fresh air and connection to nature around is a benefit to doing this type of connective work. Um, but yeah, we have all have plenty of help that can support those. Yeah, in the past, you know, if the group has done a hike, we've split off a smaller group and just done a sit under a tree or things like that. So without getting too far into details, we will make it work. And be really excited to do so.
And still have the full experience.
Yeah, absolutely.
Absolutely. Great.
Yeah.
Dan, this is your first time ever coming to Rowe. What made you think that Rowe is a good idea? What about Rowe it seemed like this was the right place for this now?
Well, I don't want to embarrass you, but it's all about you, Matt. I love you, and I have heard you speak about Rowe before. And when I found out that it was an opportunity or an option, it was an easy yes. It just feels good. It feels right. I have not set foot on the property yet, but I trust it. I trust it because I trust you. And the description of the landscape and the, you know, the mission and purpose of the organization, all of it, it seems perfectly in alignment. I can't wait to go. I can't wait to come check it out.
Real can't wait to have you. There's a lot of men who are going to be showing up on our doors under good stewardship with Dan Doty.